At the time of this video's upload, Pokémon Sword and Shield are officially less than a week away, and we are so close to finally having the games in our own hands. Even though a lot about the games has been leaked early, there are still going to be so many sights and sounds to absorb once we all finally get to play the games for ourselves for the first time. Amongst all the different things that we can expect to see in the games, there are a few that, while they're not necessarily guaranteed to appear, they most likely will based on their appearance in previous Pokémon games. And the thought of them in Sword and Shield is extremely exciting, even if they've fallen under the radar a little bit in favor of other things like the new Pokémon, for instance. So in today's video, I'm going to be going over 5 interesting things that you should look out for once you finally get the chance to play Pokémon Sword and Shield come next week, or whenever you can get your hands on the game. As always with my past couple videos, this is going to be completely leak and spoiler free, so whether or not any of this has been confirmed is completely a coincidence at the time of me talking about it, and once again, you don't have to worry about being spoiled whatsoever. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get right into it. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about in this category is Looker. The reason why we can most likely expect to see Looker in the game is because ever since his introduction in Pokemon Platinum, he has literally appeared in every single mainline Pokemon game, or at least one per generation, from Platinum all the way up until Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, so it's pretty much a foregone conclusion that we will see him in Galar as well. It also seems to be the case that his appearance is based on David Tennant's version of the Doctor in Doctor Who, which is a classic British TV show, so it's almost more appropriate for Looker to appear in Galar than he has in any other region prior to this point. So since we can most likely expect to see him in the games, what is he going to be doing there exactly? Well, when Looker appears in any given game, it usually has to do with his work for the International Police. Whether it has to do with wrangling Ultra Beasts or tracking down members of the evil team of any given region, he's always doing something interesting, and he usually offers some kind of interesting post-game quest for the player to do once they've defeated the champion. I feel like it's likely that we will see something similar for Looker in Sword and Shield as well, and if I had to put my personal opinion on it as to how I would like it to turn out, I would like to see something along the lines of the Looker missions from X and Y, where they provided some actual legitimate story within the post-game, as well as just more of the game to play through as well. It'll also just be cool to see a familiar face like Looker in fully rendered HD, so here's hoping that the trend continues and we do see Looker in Sword and Shield. Another thing that has naturally flown under the radar a little bit that we could very well see in these games is a hint at the next Pokemon games after Sword and Shield. Ever since Pokemon X and Y hinted at Generation 7 and the Alola region in those games, Pokemon games have tended to leave little hints here and there about what's next for the franchise moving forward. So with this being a sort of trending thing that has happened in the last several Pokemon games, I would not be surprised at all if it happened in Sword and Shield as well, and either Pokemon Diamond and Pearl remakes or maybe even the Generation 9 games were subtly hinted at in one way or another. However, just like the Alola hint in Pokemon X and Y, these things can sometimes be buried very deeply within the game and are very difficult to discover as is intended by Game Freak themselves. So if you want to potentially find this, you're going to have to keep your eyes peeled, so consider this a bit of an advanced notice so when you finally get your hands on the games, you can keep your eyes peeled for what could potentially be a hint at the next Pokemon games after Sword and Shield. Moving on though, I want to talk about the idea of a super boss for a second. Now, by definition, super bosses are essentially final boss characters that become accessible after you defeat the main game. Characters like Red and Gold and Silver, for instance, and Cynthia and Black and White are really good examples of this. Now, while super bosses don't necessarily appear in every single Pokemon game, they have appeared in recent ones like, once again, Red in Let's Go or even Green in Let's Go, and they're such a fun type of character that we could very well see one in Sword and Shield as well. Now, it is practically impossible to guess who would be the super boss character for Sword and Shield if indeed these games have that type of character, but most of the time when this type of character is used, it is A, a significant character of some kind, and B, most of the time it is a returning character. So maybe we could see some kind of former champion or Elite Four member who has traveled to Galar for some specific reason, or maybe we could see an evil team member like Giovanni, for instance, who is in Galar to try and conduct some kind of evil scheme. I am personally really hoping for a super boss character in Sword and Shield just because it adds that much more to the post game, and like I said, with most of the time it being a really cool returning character, it also adds a bit of excitement as to who it could be as well, and hopefully whoever it is, if it does indeed happen, will be a really cool character who provides for a really cool moment. Now, this next one is a bit of an interesting one because it's the idea of the continuation of the multiverse storyline that's kind of established itself over the past couple of generations. Ever since Generation 6, Pokemon has begun to introduce this idea of a multiverse storyline into the Pokemon world's lore. It was established with Pokemon X and Y, it was officially confirmed with Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, and then the door on it was blown wide open with Sun and Moon. And even though Sun and Moon did crack the door wide open on this idea, and obviously the Galar region in Sword and Shield is going for a completely different sort of motif, I wouldn't necessarily be surprised either if this game in some way continued to further this idea and deepened the story that's been established here over the past couple of titles. To be honest, it sounds like this whole entire thing in general is a perfect fit with the ideas and the themes of the Generation 4 games, as those were all about time and space and different dimensions, and with Generation 4 remakes seemingly on the horizon within the next couple of years or so, it seems only fitting that the games prior to them, in Sword and Shield most likely, would have some sort of continuation of this thing as we begin to come full circle with the inevitable Diamond and Pearl remakes. It obviously isn't going to be as big or as much of a focal point as it was in Generation 7, for instance, but I honestly would not doubt, and I personally hope that it is in there in some way, shape, or form, because I really like the idea of Pokemon getting deep into the lore that they've built up and continuing to develop it moving forward. And the last thing I'm going to discuss in this video that you should look out for while you're playing the games is the idea of a Ghost Girl appearance. Ever since Generation 6, once again, in X and Y, when many things of the modern Pokemon era were established, we were introduced to a creepy and still unexplained Ghost Girl, and ever since then, Ghost Girls have made a rather common appearance in games after that moving forward. And if I had to put my money on it, I would say the trend is going to continue in Sword and Shield in some way as well. With something like this though that is completely random in its execution and doesn't even really have any connective tissue per se from game to game, it's really hard to say how this would be executed even if it is implemented into the games at all. All I can say though is that I do feel like it's fairly likely given the way that this has sort of established itself as a trend over the past couple years and the last couple games. And if it does indeed happen, regardless of the way it's implemented, it is bound to be extremely interesting just due to the nature of it itself. So even if there isn't really a way to predict how it could happen, I just wanted to bring it up and let you guys know that this very likely could be happening in Sword and Shield and remind you guys of that fact so you can keep an eye out for it as you're playing the game. And speaking of the games themselves, once we finally get our hands on them, like I mentioned earlier, there are going to be so many things to see and absorb and enjoy, and it's going to be so fascinating. So if you guys had to pick one of these 5 things that you would like to see in the games the most, which one would it be? Let me know down in the comments below, and be sure to give this video a like if you enjoyed it as well. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe for more Pokemon content each and every week, and I've got plenty of Sword and Shield content coming as well, especially next week, which is the week of release, and then I will of course have a ton once the games are actually out too. If you'd like to further support the channel as well, you can do so in a number of ways. You can check me out on Spotify, you can check out my merch with the link in the description, and you can even check out my Pokemon Cardinal project if you haven't yet either, with the iCard at the top right corner of the screen. With that being said though, I'll be back on Tuesday with another video, so make sure you hit that notification bell so you can know when it goes live. Thank you so much for watching, I love you all, and until the next one, as always, I will smell you guys later.